What's up? Welcome back to the booth. It's your boy, Riley Knight, alongside Paul Humph Cheon. Been humping a fair bit of Gatorade today, my man. I've been seeing you keeping those electrolytes up. It's good to have you along, and it's good to have you along around the world, wherever you are, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us here at Pro Tour Ixalan. The players are in readiness down in the feature match area. It's time for more standard action out of Albuquerque. Let's get to it. Hello, my friends, and welcome to live coverage of Pro Tour Ixalan out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. My name's Riley. I'm joined by Paul Chern, my good friend and colleague, and we have Guillaume Matignon and Paul Rietzl up against each other, going at it hammer and tongs this round. Paul, Team Energy, Jeskai approach. What are your thoughts as we head into round number 5?
Well, I think, I talked to a lot of different people just asking about how, what they felt about playing the blue-white approach deck. And for the most part, people were like, I think I tested this deck a bunch, and I wasn't really a big fan because it was just a little, like a lot of people just had too many good answers for it. But maybe splashing this red gives you an extra angle of attack. Guillaume Matignon is playing a kind of the traditional blue-white build, but he's got 4 copies of Harness Lightning, which gives you more of that early interaction that this deck needed, along with an alternative way to win, which is 2 copies of Torrential Gearhulk as well.
Cards in the sideboard also enjoying the red splash as well. Fiery Cannonade, or Pirate Clasm as it's known, of course, and the Locust God. Some additional options there. And we see Sensor snipe a Long Tusk Cup.
He's got a copy of Pull from Tomorrow in the main deck and a copy of Pull from Tomorrow in his sideboard. One thing to note, Guillaume Matignon, testing buddies with Hall of Famer Guillaume Wafotapa.
So imagine my surprise when he turns up with the blue control deck.
Yeah.
Paul.
So not a big surprise that Guillaume Matignon's on some kind of a blue control deck. Former world champion. And this is the style of deck that he's super comfortable with, and the ideal start for him. Turn 2 and turn 3 censor. Anytime you censor something, you feel like you're getting away with something.
He's getting away with murder here. Poor old Paul Rietzl. He's under bloody McCarthy in the 1950s with the amount of censoring that's going on here with Paul Rietzl. He hasn't been able to commit anything to the ball, but this time, he says, I'll scatter instead. Oh, no. Well, plays around the censor perfectly, but still punished by Matignon, who's had all the answers.
Right. Just classic blue things. At some point, Guillaume might run out of threats. He did miss a land drop, though, which should tell Paul Rietzl that he probably does have, some ways to interact here. So Paul does need to kind of choose what threat he wants to deploy this turn.
Well, let's have a look at what Matignon's working with. You can see 2 copies of Disallow, mean that Paul Rietzl is not going to be able to enact the game plan that he's looking for. Of course, he's sort of out of the woods when it comes to censor, but after having been sniped by 2 copies of that, geez, Paul.
Yeah.
So Servant of the Conduit, is Matignon going to allow that to resolve?
I think he's probably going to let that resolve. At this point, Paul Rietzl does have access to 5 mana, so...
And we see the follow-up play with the World of Virtuoso. That's going to eat that Disallow. So Matignon is really... He's keeping Paul sort of from being able to commit too much to the board here.
Right. Now, so what Matignon is looking for here is, a Glimmer of Genius. That's kind of one of the really important cards to make sure he can keep hitting his land drop so he can get to either 6 or 7. He's got 2 copies of Approach of the Second Sun and 2 copies of Torrential Gearhulk at the top end of his mana curve. He's also playing 2 copies of Search for Escanta, which would be a pretty nice card as well.
Now, Paul Rietzl can't believe this. Look at this. He's had 4 of his plays counterspell. The only thing that slipped through the cracks is this Servant, which comes in and cracks it 4-2 for Matignon. But that Glory Bringer gets eaten up by the Disallow. Now, Matignon, I mean, it's been good the way that he's got things done so far, but he needs more lands, Paul.
Yeah, he's missing land drops here, and, Paul just has a nonstop kind of stream of threats here. And Guillaume's like, okay, I'm going to counter this. Please, no more threats. Please, just draw some of your removal. These Team Energy decks all have to play some number of Harness Lightnings. Can you just please draw those? That's probably what he's thinking to himself right now.
The Disallow is going to take care of this next World of Virtuoso. But look at this, Paul Rietzl, impassive, of course. He's one of the greatest players on Earth, and he's in a team full of stone cold superstars, Ultimate Guard Pro Team. 5 Hall of Famers and repeat competitor Mike Siegrist. So these guys really know how to party, Paul. Matignon has kept the battlefield nice and clear. Now a censor is going to be cycled. He needs to find these land drops.
That's all 4 censors now. Really needs to hit his land drops. But Paul Rietzl is not putting on a lot of pressure here. He's only got that Servant of the Conduit on the battlefield.
And this is the other problem when you're coming up against the control decks of the format is you're going to have a lot of dead cards in hand. And this is the place where Rietzl finds himself here. This Whirl of Virtuoso is nice, but with Magma Spray, Essence Scatter, Harness Lightning in hand, Rietzl is not, he doesn't have the tools that he needs here.
Yeah, if you take a look at Rietzl's main deck, it's basically got a configuration where I think it's very strong in kind of the Teamer Energy mirror. He's got cards like Essence Scatter, Confiscation Coup, etc. But all these removal effects, not so good against Jeskai Approach.
Harness Lightning now, one of the cards we discussed as being very important as early interaction for this blue-based control deck, something that the white versions are certainly lacking post-rotation.
Oh, nice. So Paul Rietzl cast a Whirler Virtuoso with 2 energy. With the energy trigger on the stack, Guillaume Matignon decided to cast a Harness Lightning to deal with the Whirler Virtuoso. In response to that, Paul Rietzl cast a Harness Lightning on his creature, thinking that there are no targets to make that Thopter token to put on additional pressure on Guillaume.
So Rietzl's energy goes up to 4, but he still does manage. Essentially, he turned it into a 1 and a red, make a 1/1
Make
flyer.
a Thopter.
Certainly, you've got this is what you got to do. You got to find the edges wherever you can. Harness Lightning is going to be more or less a dead card against the majority of Matignon's deck. An attack now for 3.
Okay, and
Yeah, he means
currently
pressure on
Guillaume
the
just
left
has
side.
all the tools here. He's got that Glimmer that allows him to kind of smooth out his draws, and he's got that Settle the Wreckage too. So if he feels that his life total being too threatened, he can use that Settle the Wreckage because Paul already just has access to a bunch of mana. So him getting a bunch of basics shouldn't really hurt Guillaume all that much.
So Matignon keeps a Glimmer of Genius on top thanks to the first Glimmer. Draws another card. We're going to see now Opt.
Invasion
More
block.
printing there, yes indeed. Invasion block. A welcome addition to the modern card pool. We've seen it pop up in combo decks here and there. Don't often get cantrip effects like this printed.
4 cards, right? Yeah, 4 cards.
Matignon passes the turn. Rietzl draws a tune for the turn and still attacking. I mean, he's got a clock. Matignon's going to have to do something about it at some point.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to take another hit here because he has that Glimmer of Genius in hand. So probably wants to cast that before anything else. This attune doesn't matter. Let's take a look at what he's working with here. He's got to Settle the Wreckage and a Commit and a Glimmer, right? So
Might even be a 4th card there hanging out in Matignon's hand. Yes, indeed. A 2nd copy of Settle the Wreckage. So he's going to be able to keep the board clear, but as you say, Paul, probably looking to snipe at least one. You know, the piddly little 1/1, a 2/2, whatever else.
Right.
He's hunting big again.
if he finds some Harness Lightnings or something, he could start doing that. But Settle the Wreckage is nice dealing with specifically like hexproof creatures. It allows you to have answers to a card like Bristling Hydra, which is a very commonly played card in these Teamer Energy decks.
We haven't seen Settle the Wreckage really break through as a huge player in Standard, but the power level's certainly there. I mean, bolstering your opponent's mana base can sometimes be problematic, but at a point like this, when we have moved towards, you know, from the mid game in towards the late game, Settle the Wreckage, the downside of it becomes a lot less prominent.
Right. It's a nice, clean answer to some of the more problematic cards in the match. You know, for control decks, you have cards like Hazoret, you have cards like the Scarab God, and you know, hexproof creatures like Bristling Hydra and maybe even Carnage Tyrant. Settle the Wreckage deals with all of those cards.
It doesn't discriminate. Gets rid of them all as long as they're attacking.
All right, is it time to settle the Wreckage?
Time to settle here.
Is he getting both the creatures here? That's also an interesting question.
Looks like Matignon is going to settle for just these 2 creatures now, and that means that Paul Rietzl gets the double rampant growth here.
Although at some point this Teamer Energy deck is going to run out of basic lands, right? Like we see the island and the 2 forests. He certainly has at least 1 mountain. Oh, he's got 2 mountains. This might be all the basics in his deck.
I think he's only got 2 more basics. They're all white bordered because Paul Rietzl apparently has no taste. And this
oh no, he's got some forests.
Yeah, no, he's got 2 more left in his library.
Oh,
He's got 2 more basics left in his library. I mean, that is actually, you know, that is a point in favour of white bordered lands. It means that when you're searching through your library for them, they stick out like a sore thumb. Paul Rietzl, of course, a gentleman of great taste and refinement, I should add, just not when it comes to choosing his basics. Although he has opted for some pretty powerful art on these basics. Matignon choosing his very wisely as well.
All right, and Paul Rietzl. Oh, and here we go.
Here we go. Okay.
Pull from tomorrow, and don't really have to worry about that. At least game 1 against Teamer Energy deck. They're not going to have their negates or spell pierces.
You just slam it, and this is what Matignon does. He's
Wow.
got a fresh grip. He has to discard a card, and he's in a great spot to now push through to the late game. He's under no pressure. Paul Rietzl has got a hand that looks a little bit more like a foot, to be honest, Paul. And it means that Matignon...
I mean, those are good cards. Depends on the matchup.
They're great cards. I mean, we can look at what's going on in his hand, and you can look at them, and the power level is there. But not so good against Jeskai Approach. So Matignon now just needs to dig for that approach. He just needs to get things done. And this game is basically all over Red Rover. We will see how things pan out. However, of course, anything can happen. But after that massive pull from tomorrow, it looks like Matignon is firmly in the driver's seat here, Paul.
Just so many cards. Wait. I don't think I have enough. I think I'm going to draw 2 more.
I need 2 more.
Yeah,
need
because,
2
come on.
Both on
Ooh,
the bottom, he
bottom,
says. So look, this is pretty clear what he's digging for here. He's
Yeah.
looking for a way to end the game.
He's looking for the approach.
Yep. Thank you.
So I don't know how much he's tested against specifically the Pantheon, Team Pantheon version of the Teamer Energy deck, which could potentially play cards like Essence Scatter or Confiscation Coup in the main. But he could be mindful of that, and even if he draws something like a Torrential Gearhulk, maybe he won't cast it. Maybe he'll just identify that approach is the way he wants to win and just choose not to go for that.
So it looks like Matignon is going to move to discard as a Spy Bluff Canal hits the bin. He's developed his mana very nicely after some early stumbles, but Rietzl now
Still drawing
just
lands.
awaiting his fate here. And we saw him look through the graveyard of Matignon here. Opt number 3, I think now, or even maybe number 4, because he realizes that the game is going to be over shortly, and he wants as much information as possible.
Yeah, Paul wants to actually know what the win condition is. This could easily just be some kind of like Jeskai Gearhulk control deck. So
Yeah.
he wants to see what Guillaume's main win condition is. He might actually be able to see both, and that gives him a lot of information.
Matignon only playing 2 copies of Approach this. I mean, you only need 1.
Right.
Really, you only need 1, but he's playing 2 in addition to 2 copies of Search for Azcanta. So Search for Azcanta, I mean, obviously very, very powerful card. Not the marquee sort of build around in this deck. We saw Utter Leighton play the card to great effect. Top 4 finish at Worlds in Boston a few weeks ago here, but only 2 copies for Guillaume Matignon.
Wow, draw go. Guillaume Matignon's hand must just be all reactive cards.
What's this?
I mean, it's main phase, right? It has to be an
It's got
approach.
to be the approach. He's tapping.
Yeah.
Oh, that's only 6 mana. 7 mana.
All
There
right,
we go.
there we go. That's 7.
7, and it's going to be approach of the second sun, which means that Paul Rietzl has got a very, very good idea of how things are going to pan out here.
Here comes the clock.
It's fine. If you prefer doing that way, that's fine. Whatever. Sure, that's cool. Yep.
Okay, he's
Nice
going to put
reason
his face
to
up. I don't think you're actually allowed to do that at all, so we may have to, yes, I think a judge's going to step in and say you just can't do that.
Okay.
So no, it's going to be flipped over. And back to Rietzl now,
Okay.
Bristling Hydra.
Probably getting countered.
Well, the stacked hand of Guillaume Matignon means that, yeah, more or
Wow.
less nothing is going to be able to ever enter the battlefield ever again.
He might even just let this resolve. He does have 2 copies of Settle the Wreckage in hand. But, all right.
Nope, he's going to commit.
Yeah, I guess it has been pretty clear that Paul isn't really sandbagging anything, as he's just been drawing and saying go, so it's pretty unlikely that he has a good follow-up here.
Well,
Or maybe...
or it's a Bristling
Okay.
Hydra, and that's going to resolve because it doesn't look like Matignon has the answers that he needs here. I mean, he's got them in hand, obviously, but he can't cast them with only 2 mana available. But
Yeah.
of course, he's still got Settle the Wreckage. He's got 1,000,001 ways to
Yeah.
deal with this Bristling Hydra.
With the 2 Settle the Wreckages in hand.
And on 13 life as well. He can even take a bit of a slapper around from this Hydra here.
He also had a 2nd copy of Commit to Memory in hand. So just in case Paul Rietzl did follow that up with a Chandra, he still had an answer. He could just commit the Chandra.
How many cards? 6.
Just 6. Just 6
Is
cards.
your 6 better than my
Mr.
6? I
Rietzl.
have like 5 Magma Sprays in my hand.
Sorry.
Yeah, Rietzl's hand is looking pretty embarrassing against this approach deck. But I mean, that's the name of the game. That is what happens when you're playing
Settle
against
the Wreckage
control
on
decks.
a hexproof creature.
This is exactly how
Gets
you
it
drew it
done.
up, Paul. But, this is not a knock on Paul Rietzl, the fact that his hand looks so bad. This is why control decks flourish, because essentially Paul has 5 cards in his hand that do stone cold nothing, and a Glory Bringer, which is actually pretty good.
I mean, the thing with the control decks, it might be weak to a lot of the kind of the more aggressive decks in the format, but where it has its biggest edge is in the teamer matchup. And that's why I would guess a lot of people would bring control here. You might be a little bit weak to maybe Ramming Knife Red, but against teamer, especially game 1,
Game
I
one.
think you're a pretty big favorite. I think after sideboard, it's actually very close.
Yeah, we've talked about this a little bit in Boston, actually. We saw a lot of teamer versus blue, as counter control, and we noticed that the trend was overwhelmingly that once the teamer deck could bring in Negate, bring in Spell, Pierce, these other cards like that, they got a bit of an edge, Paul.
Yeah, definitely.
Harness Lightning on the Glory Bringer here, so Matignon getting maximum value out of his cards. Rietzl, just got to read it and weep here as the dragon hits the bin. Check this out, he says. Here's a Servant of the Conduit, and Matignon
Ooh,
now...
the sandbagged servant of the conduit.
He's not afraid of a 2-2. He's not afraid of a 2-2. There's no fear. He's drawing to this approach of the second sun. I mean, how far down is it? Maybe 4 cards? 3 cards? 4
I don't know, if
cards
it was
down?
flipped over, it'd be a lot easier for us.
It would be. It'd be in violation of tournament rules, but it would be a lot easier.
Yeah, Guillaume's at a healthy 11 life total. He doesn't really need to worry about that servant just yet.
Search first counter off the top.
And that was, yep. Which means that this will be able to flip on Guillaume Matignon's upkeep,
And that'll
as
draw
he has more than enough cards in the graveyard to flip, which means he will be able to get that approach right away. And I think he has the mana to actually just cast it.
Paul Rietzl recognises that the game is all over Red Rover, and that is going to do it for game number 1. Guillaume Matignon winning very handily indeed. Paul Rietzl, of course, playing it out to the bitter end to get all the information he needed to hit the sideboard. But that's going to do it for game number 1. Stick around, everybody, because on the other side of this, of course, more action coming live your way from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Pro Tour Ixalan continues after this.
Looking for a challenge? Magic Online offers monthly limited and constructed events, which lead to the yearly Magic Online Championship. Download Magic Online at mtgo.com and start earning the points you need to enter.
Welcome back to the feature match area here at Pro Tour Ixalan. It is live out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you back once again for round number 5. My name's Riley Knight. I'm joined by Paul Chion. Humph himself has stepped into the booth, and it's a great pleasure to have him along. Great pleasure to have you along as well as we check in with one of our side tables now, while table number 1's getting shuffled up and ready. Gabriel Carlton Barnes against Jarvis Yu. And Paul, Carlton Barnes has been around a long time. This guy has a 4-digit DCI number.
I felt like this is a typo or he forgot to finish it. This has got a 4-digit DCI number. That is really old school.
Old school indeed. Jarvis Yu, on the other hand, here he's a little bit of a fresher face here. He's on Teamer Energy, but we've got GCB on another spicy one here. Black Red Aggro.
Yeah, Black Red Aggro featuring Duned Operative. I don't think I've ever seen this played and constructed.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think so either. Bone Picker as well, and of course some other hard-hitting cards like Dread Wanderer and what have you. Bomat Curie, the Electric Tomato, is getting up and about as well in GCB's deck here.
Well, I guess, you know, if you're in the color combination where you can't play Long Tusk Cub, I mean, this is kind of
the next best thing.
The next best thing. 2 mana 3/2 Death Touch is not a totally embarrassing creature, and he does have a good amount of artifacts in his deck.
Yeah, we can see Scrap Heap Scrounger on the field. I'd mentioned already. Bomat Curie and Key to the City also making an appearance in Carlton Barnes' deck here.
But if you notice there, Jarvis kind of put Gabe in a pretty awkward situation where Gabe Carlton Barnes had a 3-2 death touch done to operative, which he would want to trade with the Bristling Hydra, but because Jarvis had all that mana up, he could be representing Harness Lightning, which would have gotten rid of the Scrap Heap Scrounger, which would then turn the operative into a 2-2.
Yeah, it'd be very, very awkward there in that situation. Clean little 2-for-1-ski in if that were to be the way it goes. And look at this. Carlton Barnes on the front foot. He's doing exactly what he wants to be doing and attacking. We've seen different flavors of black aggressive decks get up and about. Night Market Lookout has been pulled out of the draft.
Yeah, what are people doing at this point? I think it's just they're just refusing to play these like maybe the big 3 decks or whatever that we've seen. It's just like, you know what? Anything but Teamer Energy Mirrors. I am going to play something else to try to go underneath these decks. And we've seen a lot of these like hyper aggressive, you know, mono black decks, mono white decks, and even this black red aggro deck.
Well, GCB here after this attack and the dust settles. We've got a thing kind of reduced here, but Jarvis Yu, I mean, he's under the gun on 4 life, Paul.
He is at 4 life, but he's got a much stronger creature on the board, and he's working with a Harness Lightning and I guess a Servant. But GCB does have a Scrap Heap Scrounger in the yard currently, so
wait for him to continue to keep things happening on the board, keep the action coming. And as the Servant of the Conduit comes down, we might check in with our first table now. We'll see how things pan out between GCB and Jarvis Yu. But right now, let's get back to Guillaume Matignon against Paul Rietzl. Paul Rietzl, of course, on one of the marquee, one of the premier teams at the Pro Tour here. Paul, Team Ultimate Guard Pro Team. Of course, these guys are not here to make friends. Huge names in this team. The Peach Garden Oath, of course, amongst them.
Yeah, Peach Garden Oath, John Finkel. And the 6th member was?
It is repeat competitor Mike Siegrist.
Oh, Mike Siegrist. I thought he was actually on Team Channel Fireball. But
he might be indeed. Sorry, yeah, I may have
but there are definitely 2 teams with a ton of Hall of Famers.
Indeed. Yeah, no, I may have made a mistake there. I apologize about that.
But Paul Rietzl, now he's got to be a lot happier after sideboard. He does get to trade in all of his kind of dead removal spells for a lot of counter magic. You know, he's got a couple of negates in his sideboard. And it looks like kind of Team Ultimate Guard's also playing a copy of Nissa, Steward of Elements. So maybe there's something that I missed the memo on the Nissa being the new thing to do.
The card of the moment. I mean, this is something that obviously they've put a lot of thought into. They don't just randomly chuck this in as a 15th sideboard card. Maybe the Steward of Elements is here to crack some skulls this weekend. We will find out. Having a look at the Ultimate Guard Pro Team roster here. You are right, of course. It is Andrew Cuneo rounding out that roster rather than Mike Siegrist.
I see. One thing that's going to be interesting for me is, it looks like Guillaume Matignon just missed the land drop.
Oh dear, and that's not what you want to be doing when you're playing a control deck?
with a resolved Bristling Hydra on the board as well.
That spells trouble here.
That is definitely rough for Guillaume.
I mean, we've already touched upon this, Paul, but it's worth revisiting the fact that the control decks are in a much worse position post-board. Negate, Spell Pierce, all these cards come in to replace cards like Magma Spray. Rietzl is in a great spot here to really turn the screws in his opponent, especially as Matignon is missing land drops here. Disallow on the Whirl of Virtuoso.
Yeah, one thing I'm curious is just like how exactly Paul Rietzl may be sideboarded here, because Guillaume Matignon is playing with 2 copies of Torrential Gearhulk in the main and 2 more copies in his sideboard, and he didn't play one game 1. So if Paul didn't keep in any copies of his Essence Scatters or Harness Lightnings or Braids, you know, it's possible that the Torrential Gearhulk could actually just get him as well.
Rietzl, he's got a nice hand here. Look at this, slice in twain as well. I guess
he still kept an Essence Scatter. Okay.
Essence Scatter as well to combat any of those.
Oh, wow.
Look at this. Guillaume Matignon has had enough. He's had enough. He didn't get off to a good start here, and he recognized that Rietzl is going to run away with the game. He probably wants to give himself the time to take out game 3.
Yeah.
So that's the way she goes there for game number 2 between Rietzl and Matignon. We'll check in with what's going on our back tables as soon as we've got a good idea of where we could head there. But I mean, I mean, that wasn't a great example of how these post-board games play out, Paul, because you know they are centered around cards like Negate and what have you. But you know, I think you've got to give it towards the momentum towards the energy player after board.
Yeah, well, especially being on the draw too. If you don't curve out perfectly against. If the control deck doesn't have the proper counters to line up with all the threats that the aggressive decks can play, It is really punishing. And Guillaume not only missed a land drop, but he didn't have counter magic for the early plays as well.
Let's check in with
What
our
is
back
happening
table
here?
as well. Wilson Hunter and Scott Lipp. And just to part the kimono just a little bit here, ladies and gentlemen, this is why having my job rather than Paul's is so much better.
No, I'm
Watch out.
totally off this board.
What's going on here? Godfarrow's
What's
gift
going on here? Well, we have the mono-white Oketra's Monument deck.
And we've got Godfarrow's gift on the other side as well,
Godfarrow's
which
gift.
looks to be active.
We have 2 Godfarrow's gifts. There's an Oketra's Monument on that. Why is there an Oketra's Monument? Oh, that must have been hostage takered.
It must have been taken by the hostage.
Okay, we're
yep.
putting the pieces together. I believe it said Scott was on 2 life. It's Scott's on 2 life.
Which should change pretty soon, seeing as these Angel of
There is an
Angels of
alpha
Invention get
attack
busy.
here. There is an attack with everything, but those Angel of Inventions do have lifelink. So, assuming all those Angel of Inventions are Scott's, he's probably in a very good position here.
It's like it's an attack for at least 10 in the air. We're not sure if that... I mean, that hostage taker is also looking to get frisky here. Oh, and a block here.
Who's attacking?
It looks like Lip is attacking.
Oh, okay,
Yep.
yeah.
So this is an attack for an enormous amount because, of course, I failed to mention, the Angels of Invention are buffing each other and the rest of the team.
And they have Vigilance, so it's just offense and defense.
Yeah, it's just
Scott's going to gain a ton of life, and it's going to be super difficult for Wilson to come back from this.
Wilson Hunter's deck is lower to the ground. You can see that he's got a huge board presence with tokens and has got very, very wide. Adanto Vanguard has obviously done some good work to push Scott down to 16. But look at that. 19 points of damage pushed through. Hunter on 1 life and Scott Lipp up to 16. And that is going to do it. I mean, wow. Godfarrow's gift has been playing, had a pretty quiet couple of weeks, Paul, but it's certainly made its mark on that game there.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, it really just kind of depends on how much Abrade you think is going to be in the format. I think that was the card that kind of pushed that deck out. And if people are, kind of cheating on that card, Godfarrow's gift deck, very, very powerful.
We've seen it sort of, take a bit of a backseat recently, Abrade, and maybe it's a better time. I mean, you can't play 7-mana artifacts when people are main decking shatter effects, Paul,
right.
But, these days, maybe, as you say, people are skimping on the Abrades, and it may be time for Father Christmas to come and give out some more of these Godfarrow's gifts. We will see. And, of course, we are able now to head back to table number 1 and an opt in response to your Attune with Ether. That's next level play.
Maybe he'll forget to get the lane.
Fail to find on turn number 1. No, Paul Rietzl's not going to miss a trick here. The Hall of Famer certainly knows his way around games of Magic. He's been playing for a very long time. Paul, he made his PT debut 15 years ago in Osaka in 2002. He's played in 52 Pro Tours, if you'll believe it.
Wow.
And double that number of GPs. 4 Pro Tour top 8s helped him get propelled into the top 8. And, of course, winning Pro Tour Amsterdam in 2000. I just know this off the top of my head. I'm definitely not reading it off a piece of paper in front of me that was prepared.
No,
by my
I'm here. I
colleagues.
can confirm off the top of the head.
Off
He
the
must
top,
have a counter here
straight
because I
off
do
the
see
dome.
a Search for Escanta in his hand.
Yeah.
And he does have the sensor. So this is, again, the ideal start. You got to just counter everything until you can start drawing cards. That is kind of the main game plan for these control decks. What is Guillaume working with here?
Being on the play does make a massive difference here, as it enables you to keep your head, you put your snoot ahead and keep your snoot ahead as well with these counter spells and what have you.
I'm assuming that Guillaume still has another counter effect in hand. Otherwise, given that the hand that we see, okay.
So
Sensor was added.
Crafter's Bestiary is also censored here by Paul. I mean, this is not a good feeling for Paul. He's been censored 4 times this match. I mean, that's just so many daggers.
Well, and in this matchup, the best way to play around quote-unquote censor is you just jam into it for the most part. Yeah, and you just, at some point, they're either going to run out or they're just not going to have it. If you respect it too much, I think oftentimes you're going to lose more games than win.
So you give him enough breathing room. Well, right now, Paul Rietzl has had his game plan taken apart by this card, and Matignon is able to play the Search for Azcanta here, which is doesn't look like it'll be flipping just yet with only 4 cards in the bin.
And okay, so this is kind of fun. Paul Rietzl actually has untapped lands that he could play here.
Yeah.
But because Guillaume already played 2 sensors, he's putting him on. He just can't have a 3rd sensor, and he really wants to play his tap land.
Yeah.
So he did not play an untapped land there. Just kind of running the numbers.
So Rogue Refiner eats it to a Harness Lightning, and it's back to Matignon now, who...
heads up play here.
Yeah,
we have
I like
5 cards in graveyard from Guillaume Matignon. So he's choosing to cast Opt to put a card into his graveyard, and very likely will just put anything in the graveyard here.
Yeah, no matter what it is, it's going to hit the bin
To,
because
to,
that
to
means
hit the bin, unless the card is just completely bonkers.
Nope.
Glimmer of Genius, too. I know that was hard for him.
it would have been very tricky now that he obviously has the 4 lands to cast it, but that means that we do have Azcanta the Sunken Room. It's been found. The search was successful, Paul. The search party's come back, covered in riches and jewels and what have you.
2 cards, yes.
And Matignon is going to be in a very, very good position from here on out, especially as he can activate it right now.
Yeah, and we even saw in the World Championships, this was kind of the main win condition for these blue control decks against the Teamer Energy deck. You just 1-for-1, counter everything as much as you can, and try to flip that search as quickly as possible.
Bristling Hydra is the threat played by Rietzl. Looks like it's going to resolve as well.
Oh, okay.
Matignon without the answer. Now the Sunken Ruin is going to find him something off the top of his deck.
Needs to find to settle the wreckage as quickly as possible here.
Yeah, this Hydra is going to get frisky. Otherwise, a commit to memory, not quite the answer that he's looking for here. But the hexproof creature means that it can really cause some headaches for control players.
He does have a pretty interesting card in hand here. I think I see a Locust God.
Yeah, yeah, hiding out there.
So he doesn't really have a whole lot of options. So I wouldn't be surprised if he just jams the Locust God here.
Yep, come on and slam.
And does Paul Rietzl have an answer? I mean, it is a 4/4. There's a lot of cards that you can have here. You can have a Chandra. You can have a Glorybringer.
Can I just get
Rietzl's going to have a quick look at this card. Looks like it may be in a different language here.
Right.
So Rietzl's going to make sure he gets across exactly what this card can do. Around the world, of course, we have the advantage of having it right up there on our screen.
Yeah, it gives your deck a little bit of threat diversity. And also, if you just win a game with the Locust God, you kind of get extra bragging rights, too.
Oh, the moral victory.
Oh, yeah,
certainly.
for sure.
The moral victory
Like,
is
yeah,
all
played
yours.
this limited bomb.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
got me there.
So as you can see, it is a. I mean, you know, it plays right into the game
Oh,
plan
and
of
take a look
the,
at Paul's hand. He does
deck.
not have an answer currently to the Locust God in hand.
No, I mean, bringing in Slice in Twain, a great answer to the search, but obviously never able to sort of exploit that. But a Servant of the Conduit and a World of Virtuoso not going to do much in the face of this 4/4.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So he decided to bring in the Slice and Twain for possibly the searches. I guess he was also anticipating Torrential Gearhulk
Oh yeah, deals with that very totally.
to bring that in. But that's the thing with these disenchant effects. When your opponents don't have any in hand or in play, like it just kind of rots away in your hand. But the games do go kind of long, to be fair.
So an attack now with the Bristling Hydra. I think Matignon happy to take the damage here as we see it pumped up to a 5/5. Now Matignon is going to have an unending stream of chump blockers here. So he can afford to take 5, Paul.
Yeah. He's currently sitting pretty at 20 life. So take the attack here. Then he'll just be able to turn out a token every single turn. The Locust God also just has the ability to make tokens by itself. 4 mana to basically loot. And anytime you draw, you make a 1/1 Thopter. So.
All right, 7.
So he gets in for 7
Wow.
here. Wow. Yeah,
All right.
Rietzl really looking to crack some skulls here as Guillaume Matignon goes down to 13. But as we said, Paul, I mean, Matignon is in a position to make 3 Thopters a turn. Not
card,
mentioning any,
make a Thopter.
any other effects he has here. Looks like we might have a busted sleeve. Oh, press F to pay respect to that sleeve, ladies and gentlemen.
And he's
because
even-
it has gone.
He's even got an irrigated farmland, too, which allows him to
cycle it away.
cycle
Very
and
nice.
make a 1/1.
Very nice. I mean, this is the thing. The Locust God, we haven't seen it played a huge amount, but it turns these, cards like that or Glimmer of
It's
Genius.
like, just so you know, I have 2 tokens. Very important.
Looks like those tokens are still being fetched out of the...
Yeah, I don't think, 1/1 blue and red insect creature tokens.
not at the top of the pile.
No.
Not at the top of the pile.
Might have to
certainly
go
not.
digging for those.
But there are 2 of them on the
I
battlefield.
see a white card in Guillaume's hand.
All right.
Is that a Settle the Wreckage, maybe? Oh, and he's got the answer to the
Settle the
Bristling
Wreckage.
Hydra. Wow.
So Rietzl could go searching here for some basics because it looks like his battlefield may indeed get wrecked.
I think Guillaume is kind of deciding whether or not he wants to play that farmland in hand. I think you do, because that gives you access to 8 mana, which means you can actually activate the Locust God to make a 1/1 blue and red insect token, and also either make another token or activate Azcanta the Sunken Ruin.
Yeah, 4 mana there, sort of the magic number in terms of
Yeah.
giving him the options in terms of whether he wants to get on the board, whether he wants to filter his draws, or whether he wants to just find the particular liter of gasoline he's looking for. And
Oh, token.
tidy play here. Yep, 7/6 comes in. And
Now is
Matignon.
Guillaume going to
Oh, dear.
loot or Azcanta? Okay, so he went for the Azcanta here.
So the Sunken Ruin gets...
Oh, and
activated.
you can
And a
cycle
Censor as
Censor.
well. Oh, Matignon
make
is
a 1/1.
really doing it here. He's drawn a card. Are we going to see another?
There's going to be more.
Going to be
Plenty
more locusts here. Yep.
Look at this thing go.
Really taking to the skies here now. This little Air Force is buzzing away and is going to really cause some problems for Paul Rietzl, who, I mean, we did mention was sort of favoured post-board, but as it is here, I mean, negates are not the card you want against a card like the Locust God.
Yep.
And it's a one-of, Paul. It's a one-of in the sideboard.
Well, you play one to draw it, duh.
That's all you need. Guillaume Matignon. He's looking
Like
pretty
you
happy
said,
with himself.
Negate, the most popular card
Yeah.
to play in sideboards. How do you beat Negate? The Locust God.
I mean, we've seen the Scarab God teach some very sharp lessons to people up and down standard for a long time, but this little brother is all of a sudden slapped the Wiimote out of his hand, and all of a sudden he's the new Mario Kart champion as Chandra gets committed here.
Chandra is being committed here, and now will Guillaume Matignon choose to go for a Settle the Wreckage here? Or does he just want to draw more cards?
Big attack here from Rietzl, not playing around the settle.
Oh, here we go. Before blocks.
Before blocks.
So does Paul Rietzl have a counter effect? If not, this is going to be huge.
He's still sitting on this slice in twain.
Oh, and not only that, Paul has to shuffle his library, so he cannot draw that Chandra Torch of Defiance.
Oh, no! Oh, no, he does have another one in hand, does he?
Oh, okay. Maybe.
Or was that the one that was perhaps cast? But in
That
any
might
case,
be the
yeah,
one
if he
that
wants to
was
search
cast.
it out, no,
Nope.
it was cast. So Paul is going to have to, just hope that that Chandra makes an encore performance at some point. But yeah, 3 lands, too juicy. You got to get him out.
Yeah. Paul in a lot of trouble here. He needs to deal with that Locust God, but those Thopters, or not Thopters, the blue and red insect tokens are still going to be very difficult to deal with.
One of the other great things about Settle the Wreckage, one of the other reasons that it doesn't punish you too badly for playing it, is that there aren't a huge number of mana sinks in Standard.
Right. Once you get to the point where you're casting Settle the Wreckage, turn 4, turn 5,
Yeah.
Most of the decks have already kind of done what what they can do. I mean,
Yeah.
there is the Scarab God.
That is true.
That is a
That is
card
true,
yes.
that can punish you for playing Settle the Wreckage, but
But outside of that, I mean, we don't have huge X spells. We don't have,
Right.
spell lands like we might have seen years ago, cards like Nephalia Drownyard or what have you. There aren't a huge number of ways to spend your mana here,
And
although
Paul
Scarab got an important.
and Paul Rietzl just playing straight up teamer version, meaning he doesn't even have the mana sinks there. And the Locust God.
Locust God takes it home for Guillaume Matignon. He's done very, very well to leverage the power of that card, and he's going to be very happy with himself. A huge scalp to claim here. The Hall of Famer Paul Rietzl on his belt now. Well done indeed to Guillaume Matignon. But of course, with the conclusion of that game, that match there, Paul, looks like we're going to be able to head back to another table. Or am I mistaken, as it looks like things are being packed up on that table as well? We're going to get a game update as soon as possible to figure out exactly what's happening on this table here after things have all wrapped up between Matignon and Rietzl. Bit of an upset here for Rietzl, of course, who would be favoured going into Game 3. We'll see more of this, I'm sure. Teamer Energy battling pretty hard post-board against Azcanta control decks, but it looks like we're going to be able to stick around here for game number 3. Things tied up between these two players. Godfarer's Gift on the right. We've got a very interesting aggro deck on the left here. Now, Godfarer's Gift, I mean, it's not a card that's been around much recently in Standard, Paul, but certainly the power level is there. This deck has proven itself.
Yeah, certainly incredibly powerful deck. I think the first Pro Tour where you could play this deck, many people were kind of over-prepared for the deck because it did win like a Magic Online PTQ, and people were super concerned. So you saw like cards like Crook of Condemnation all over the place. There was a lot of graveyard hate. But I think because this deck is kind of no longer one of like the top options, you just don't see cards like that being played anymore. And I think that gives room for this deck to actually shine.
Now, what's very interesting about Wilson Hunter's list is that he is playing 3 copies of Scavenger Ground. More or less free in a mono-coloured deck. This is a mono-white aggro deck, of course. Orketra's Monument-based. And with things like Shafet Dunes, 15 Plains, 3 Scavenger Ground, not a high cost to pay.
Oh, yeah. It's effectively free in this deck, and that is probably one of the more important cards. Outside of him just making sure he curves out and you just play that turn 3 Orketra's Monument, it is super important for, at some point in the late game for him to actually have that. Because Godfarer's Gift, it's a 7-man artifact, right? If you can't put it into your graveyard by milling it or playing a Champion of Wits, it takes a long time to get there.
Gate to the Afterlife is another way for Scott Lipp to, you know, sort of hurry that enchantment, that artifact up, you know, have it arrive at the party a little bit before it's invited here. But no, as you mentioned, Scavenger Ground is it's not a stone cold killer against the deck, but it still does a lot of work in sort of hamstringing the main plan.
Yeah, it's free disruption. The thing is, the combination of just having an aggressive start with access to this means that if this deck is on the play, it's going to be a pretty big favorite, I think.
Now, unfortunately for Wilson Hunter, his chosen disenchant effect is Fragmentize out of the board. Now, that may be in a good position against the Gate to the Afterlife. Not so good. Pretty embarrassing, honestly, against the old GPG itself.
Yeah. Not great there. I guess he maybe wasn't expecting too many Godpharaoh's Gifts in the tournament. Fragmentize is a far more efficient disenchant effect.
I mean, it deals with a lot of stuff. You know, it's an efficient answer to a turn to search for Escanta. You know, it can take out a lot of the vehicles that are played as well. So, you know, a great card in the format generally, but in this setting here, I mean, you know, you're still sniping things like Gate to the Afterlife. You can get rid of a Walking Ballista if you really need to as well, but it's not at its best against the gift itself.
Hunter is also, Wilson is also playing Ixalan's Binding and Cast Out. So he actually has a lot of ways to kind of prevent Scott from doing his thing with the Godpharaoh's Gift. But Scott Lipp is also just playing a bunch of powerful cards in general. Like, he's got a Walking Ballista, which seems like it's a pretty good card in this matchup, given that there's a ton of 1/1s that this deck can play. He's also got, we saw the Hostage Taker that he brought in. That's a pretty powerful card. So, you know, if he just kind of plays out this matchup like a traditional control deck, deal with the threats 1-for-1, maybe play an Angel of Invention, maybe that'll be enough. Although
like
7 total Angel of Inventions
between the two?
Yeah.
Yeah, this card is obviously playing a different role in both of them here. Of Angel of Invention as a flying Anthem effect, a way to beef up that board presence there for Wilson Hunter, but of course a payoff card for the more combo approach of Scott Lipp, who looks like he's going down to 7. I had a look at Wilson Hunter's hand, and it seemed pretty good.
Oh, I missed all the creatures here on the bottom.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we got some other ones as well.
Yeah, we got some nice ones. We got some Kite Sail freebooters for a little bit of disruption. Seeker Squire.
Yeah, keeps the cards flowing, and obviously, you know, comes back as a 4/4 or maybe even a 5/5 if the exploration goes well.
Just maxing out on ways to kind of put cards into your graveyard.
Now, what this is going to come down to, Paul, I think what's going to be really important in this matchup is whether we see a Ketra's Monument come down early. This is what really pushes the aggro deck that Wilson Hunter is playing as a mulligan to 5, puts some further screws on Scott Lipp here. Maybe the aggressive start, regardless of how it pans out, is going to go well for Wilson Hunter here. But a Ketra's Monument, a key card in the white aggro deck.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, this deck just basically revolves around it. If you take a look at this deck, it's playing 4 copies of Aviary Mechanic in the main deck. It's just not a card you play, but if you have an Oketcher's Monument in play, things can get really out of hand.
Yeah, it basically reads just 1 white mana.
Make a 1/1.
Make a 1/1 as many times as you like, essentially. And you know, if you're getting, I mean, there aren't a lot of value creatures in the deck. I guess you can bounce your Angel of Invention, get some more Thopters or whatever, or some more servos, I should say. But you know, generally speaking, it's just an enabler for this Ketra's Monument. Interesting to see Metallic Mimic as well. I mean, I guess there's not a huge number of crossovers between.
Well, this deck is actually called Mono White Vampires. There's a ton of vampires that actually are in this deck, and you know, if you maybe kind of go off with the Aviary Mechanic, you could also potentially name Servo. Wait, does it Ketra's Monument make?
It makes Warriors, I think.
Warriors. You can name it Warriors. You can do a lot, but it's just another cheap creature to curve filler, and you know, it's still just something that
there are a bunch of
to pump
vampires. I mean, in fairness, Adanto Vanguard. I mean, there's Maverick Fane as well, and he gets vampires up and about very quickly here, as we see Metallic Mimic itself come down. I mean, we'll get confirmation on what it's naming, but
I'm going to guess Vampire.
You're going to guess Vampire?
There's a Legion's Landing on the battlefield.
I think that's probably a very prescient.
Which is a nice way to also get value for these aggressive white decks. Legion's Landing is the card. You just play a bunch of creatures early, flip the Legion's Landing, and a lot of decks just have really difficult time dealing with kind of that value that you get from the Legion's Landing. Oh,
Fane, a great curve out here as we see a 1/1 enter the battlefield thanks to the Dusk Apostle. And yeah, Wilson Hunter really firing on all cylinders here. Excellent choice of basic land art as well. He's done really well to pick something obscure here.
And Scott Lipp is playing the Esper version. There are no sweepers in the deck.
And he's not off to a great start here. Scott Lipp does not have a good hand.
Down to 5, so I mean, it's not even clear he would have been able to come back. even if he had a good hand, this Wilson Hunter is just with the ideal start here.
Yeah, he's doing
He's even
really
going to
well.
be able to flip this Legion's landing.
He is. Oh, straight away he is. And that's going to buffer his mana hugely. And if he's got other cards to deploy very quickly, cards, for example, like, you know, an Angel, an
Another
Angel of
Mimic.
Invention.
Vampire.
A vampire again, he says. Okay, well, there you go. There you go. Easy game.
So many triggers.
I mean, Metallic Mimic was so huge in these zombie decks of yesteryear when we saw, you know, the synergy really taken to the next level here. And right
Look
now it's
at
doing
this.
great work. 2-2
Wow.
lifelinkers for
Talking
nothing.
about going wide.
Jeez, he's doing so well here, Wilson Hunter, really recognizing the, or demonstrating to us, you know, some of the power of this aggressive card. And I have to say, there's no Iketra's Monument to be seen here.
No, just good, honest Magic. 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop.
Another Legion's landing here. It's going to make a 1-1, which comes in as a 2-2, of
Well,
course.
hey, 1 mana 2/2 lifelink is a pretty good rate.
Pretty good rate. It is legendary, though.
Ah, right.
Ugh. Can't play too many. And now
Oh,
a
this is
Danto
an
Banjo.
indestructible one, so you don't have to worry about that one.
And you can see Wilson Hunter with some
All
pretty haphazard
right.
permanent placement.
Let's
What can
just-
Scott Lib find
Let's
here?
just move that bar over a little bit.
Just a little bit, I would say there, Paul Cheon. Scott Lib with his back against the wall, a champion of wits here. Draws 2, discards 2. Fatal Push is
If he
amongst
blocks
the
the
cards found.
Vanguard, I think that's still lethal.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
huge attack here for Hunter. It's a huge attack. With the
And the Angel
removal
of
spell
Sanctions.
in hand, Angel of Sanctions going to wrap things up
Wow.
for Wilson Hunter. Sitting pretty on 25 life and his opponent knocked down to 0 in no short order. And a great performance from an aggressive, very, very aggressive deck indeed. Iketra's Monument, Vampire Synergies pushing things over the top there as he hunts his way to a 4-1 start here at Pro Tour Ixalan. What a pleasure it's been to have your company now as the feature match area slowly but surely empties out. We'll be back before too much longer with round number 6. Plenty of stuff to still left to discover in Standard, Paul.
Yeah, a lot of aggro decks. And really, there's not a lot of great sweepers that people are playing. So I think people are just not being punished for playing all these like low-to-the-ground, super aggressive decks to kind of go underneath these teamer decks.
Might be a good time to go wide indeed. We'll explore this further, ladies and gentlemen. I'm looking forward to your company as we do it live here from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Pro Tour Ixalan continues. We've got to go to a break, but stick around because on the other side of this, more standard action coming your way. We'll see you soon.
right, 5 rounds down, 3 to go. We're standard all the way here in the afternoon of Pro Tour Ixalan Day 1. Remember, 4 and 4 is what you need to come back on Day 2. How about this for a story? Someone who has to go win, win, win to make Day 2 is your reigning world champion, William Jenson. He's just lost to Gary Patrick, who advances to 2 and 3. Jenson at 1 and 4, no more losses to give. He must win 3 in a row simply to return for Day 2. The rest of Team Ultimate guard Andrew Cuneo is 3 and 2. Reduke lost to Kentaro Yamamoto, so Duke is 3 and 2. John Finkel up to 3 and 2, defeated Sebastian Pozzo, standard master this round. But then better news, Paul Rietzl is 4 and 1 despite that loss to Guillaume Matignon, and Owen Turtenwald defeated Noah Walker to advance to 5 and 0. So a 5-0, a 4 and 1, 3 3-2s. But William Jenson, unexpectedly, at 1 and 4. Well, we just saw Mono White Vampires in action in the feature match area. How about the pilot? Let's hand you down to Brian David Marshall.
Thanks, Rich. I'm here with Wilson Hunter. We just watched him on camera playing this Mono White Vampires deck. And now, Standard's a little bit out of your normal bailiwick when it comes to playing Magic.
Right.
You're more known for Legacy.
That's right, yeah. So Legacy is my favorite format, but my friend Phil and I decided to dive more competitively into Standard and other competitive formats this year. So.
Now, Phil Braverman, who we had in do a deck tech earlier today, if you haven't seen it, you should go check that out on this Mono White Vampires deck. He has been qualified for the Pro Tour for a little while, getting on. How much did that drive you to get back to the Pro Tour? You've been here before, you have 2 GP top 8s, but how much did that push you to get to the Pro Tour?
Yeah, it was huge. So like Phil's one of my best friends, even outside the game, met him in college. So to know that I could come out here and just have an awesome trip with him, it was definitely a motivating factor to get out here, yeah.
Now, you guys do a Magic podcast together?
We do, it's called The Brainstorm Show. It's about the Legacy format. So it's normally what we play, but so that's our podcast.
So now I'm interested, people have a legacy mindset when they approach Magic,
right,
that you guys choose this Mono White Vampires deck. What is it about this deck that appealed to you in this sort of energy charged Standard format?
Right, so we actually thought that this type of Pro Tour was going to be good for us, having a few more weeks of the set being out than normal. We felt like the format was going to be pretty established. We know that it's still pretty wide open, but we wanted to put together a deck that would attack red, energy, and then actually this deck I just played I thought would show up in numbers of the Reanimator deck. So we felt like the Mono White deck is actually pretty good against those decks. And I would say it's actually not great against some fringe strategies, but we really were trying to hone it and tune it to the decks we thought people were going to play in this tournament.
All right, well, you're off to a good start. You're 4 and 1 here. Continued good luck in the tournament. Thanks for talking with us here at Pro Tour Ixalan.
Thank you.
Well, they're certainly trying to create a legacy for themselves. Phil Braverman and they're the other half of the Brainstorm podcast, and they're doing very nicely with Mono White Vampires. Well, there are plenty of fun decks around the room. We found them for you. Here comes another one. It's deck tech time. Here's Maria with Gerard Fabiano.